think I get enough sleep. I plan for at least 7.5 hours. I run a tight ship at my home. TVs, gadgets, electronics, anything that goes buzz or brr or has some sort of on and off switch from about 7:30, I start shutting down, and then I usher the kids to the back of the home, and then it's reading time till at least about maybe 8. And then I say, it's time to say goodnight. My first alarm goes off at 3:30, 3:45. I do sleep well, but still, an alarm going off during the witching hour is never good for one. So I think I have enough sleep. But what about the rest of South Africans? There's a piece published by UCT of Dr. Del Rey. She's associate professor and head of the sleep center at UCT, who says that sleep is a biological necessity that's on par with food and water. Sleep is a right. But while there's no national data on sleep disorders here in South Africa, sleep has been historically under-recognized as a major player impact level when it comes to mental health, physical health, and also the cognitive consequences. I'd love to see a productivity study, an economical study on what impact the lack of sleep has on South Africans. Professor Del Rey joins me now. Good morning, Del. Really appreciate your time. You describe sleep as a basic human right. How does this framing change the way society should be thinking about rest?
Yeah, good morning, Lester. Thanks very much for having me. I think it's really interesting because the problem with sleep is it's really easy to abuse it. Because we were speaking about how much sleep you get in the mornings, sleep takes up a certain amount of time. It can appear to many people to be a time hog. And I think the problem with sleep is that very often we don't know about the seriousness of its consequences until many years down the line. So it's actually a little bit like the old sort of school thinking around smoking. You know, you can smoke today and you're fine. You might develop lung cancer down the line. And lots of the really serious consequences associated with short sleep are deep into the future. You know, many of us are able to tolerate a little bit of sleep deprivation sort of right now. And so therefore it's easy not to prioritize sleep because we haven't yet, until this point in time, really fully understood the long-term consequences of insufficient or poor quality sleep.
You also tie into the issue of inequality when it comes to sleep. There is gender inequality. Generally, mothers bear the domestic burden of raising families. They get up earlier to get kids ready for school. There is the spatial justice inequality. Those who live in more violent, gun-prone areas, they're getting less sleep, but also spatially and economically, where if you live far from where you work, you have to get up much earlier to get to the job to support your family. We don't usually talk about sleep as an ambit of inequality in South Africa.
Yeah, it's something that we've recently discovered. I think we've known for quite some time, and it's in the global north as well, around the differences between men and women, for example. Having different demands on their time. But I think particular to South Africa, the second 2 points that you mentioned, recently 2 of my PhD graduates did some incredible work looking at sleep in individuals living in low-income communities. And we observed long sleep, which was very odd. We're talking about 9, 10, sometimes 11 hours of sleep per night, which is completely unexpected. But when we looked closer, we saw it was of really poor quality. And then on interviewing, individuals really revealed how much they fear sleep, though they've got a lot of fear related to safety at night. So sleep is often a form of retreat from interpersonal violence, but also neighborhood violence. But there's a lot of it's when you sleep well, in order to have good quality of sleep, you actually have to let your guard down and allow yourself to be vulnerable. And in many communities, this is an absolute impossibility. And so these individuals are struggling to let their guard down because they have to be vigilant to make sure that they or their family members are going to be safe at night, which means that very often their sleep is poor at night And then teachers, for example, will report that these particular kids will then, for example, sleep at every opportunity during class or at school. And that's the time, of course, when they should be learning. So that's just completely setting
Yeah.
people up for an incredibly difficult future.
There's a message here from Dane. Lest I see with high school learners, especially from lower socioeconomic circumstances, fall fast asleep in class. You're also right that in terms of the gender differences, men more affected by sleep apnea, women are more prone to insomnia. How do these correlate and these are completely my anecdotal observations, that if women get fewer quality sleep, how are they also then counterintuitively, for me, not getting enough sleep because of a condition like insomnia? If you are incredibly tired, you fall asleep at any available time, Dale?
I think there are two different issues there. Not all women have insomnia, but many of us will have incredibly pressing demands on our time. And so we just end up being short sleepers. So we might have good quality sleep, but perhaps we're only accumulating 5 or 6 in a night. And that's insufficient over time for optimal physical and mental health. Then there are the women who maybe don't have those time pressures, but who have difficulties falling asleep or staying asleep for various reasons. So they may suffer from insomnia. So they also only accumulate very little sleep over time.
And there's my alarm that just went off. When we talk about having sleep discussed as a conversation in our economy, do we pay enough attention to how much poor sleep, translates to workplace accidents, productivity loss, maybe even economic costs for a nation of poor sleepers?
Yeah, slowly this data is beginning to come out, specifically in the global north, where there's some surveys that have looked at associations between insufficient sleep and then productivity in the workplace, and they've even translated that to see how much does it actually cost the economy. And I think the one study showed that insufficient sleep in the US costs the US economy about 2.8% of their GDPs, for example. So these data are beginning to come out. In South Africa, we don't have that same economic data, but we are certainly starting to look at sleep in the shift work context, because that's an example of where we know that people who are sleep deprived are more likely to be susceptible to workplace accidents. And if we think about the mining sector, for example, or the transport sector, these are accidents we can't afford to happen. They have very, very serious consequences. So there is some drive now to start to take shift work related sleep issues a little bit more seriously. But that needs to move into the mental and into the medical sector, because we need to think about what does good sleep mean for our doctors and our nurses who have to work around the clock. Yeah, so we've got a long way to go.
And just as that, a message coming in, Lester, doctors on calls have to do 29 hours when on calls. Now recovering from that requires sleeping tablets and now suffers from sleep disorders. Imagine surgeons being exposed to this. Dr. Del Rey of the Sleep Center at UCT,